I'm very excited about our next speaker because she is going to give us some pointers on how we can improve on telling stories of people that live with disabilities. So, her name is Sabriye Tenberken, and when she was just 12 years old, she turned completely blind. Now, she was tired of people telling her what she can do, what she cannot do, and she had always had a passion for Tibet. So she decided to study Tibetology, and then she went on to create the official Braille system for Tibet that is used up until today. And she decided to move to Tibet after that, where she started the first school for the blind in Tibet. Now, I have mentioned, of course, that she is a fan and she loves that region, so she also wrote a book about her life there. Today, Sabriye is based in southern India. She is the co-founder of a leadership institute, which is called KANTHARI. And what they do there is they train changemakers. And these are people who have gone through the worst of adversity. So they have faced war, they have faced violence, they have been discriminated against, or they have had to live with the effects of climate change. And she is here today with her talk titled Reduced to Limitations, Disability in the Media. Here is Sabriye Tenberken.
Okay, good. Let's start. By the way, I was asked to do a talk on inclusion of people with disabilities in the media. Well, in my opinion, true inclusion is only possible if we stop being too fascinated by the actual disability. If journalists emancipate themselves from clinging to cliches like wheelchair-bound, struck by blindness, or from dark to light. And if journalists are not so inspired always about the fact that most of us are actually quite okay with living with a disability. Now, true inclusion can only be celebrated if we all focus on the story beyond the story. And this is exactly what I want to do today. So I have 3 protagonists for you that I want to represent to you or present to you. 2 of those protagonists were featured in the international media many times. And one is only for you today. He was not featured yet, but maybe one of you would like to go to the northern Uganda and write a story beyond the story. Now, let me start with the first protagonist. It's Kila. And Kila was the first blind student that we ever had, or one of the first blind students. She comes from a village right underneath Everest. And Kila is born blind. Her siblings are born blind. Her father is blind. And her mother died when Kila was very, very young. You can imagine the villagers, they were mumbling. This family is completely cursed. There must be a water ghost, a Lu, that is possessing the house. And Kila was really suffering from the fact that nobody wanted to play with her. Later there was an aunt, and she heard about our school, and she brought Kila and the siblings to us. And Kila learned in only a couple of years reading, writing, speaking in 3 languages, Tibetan, Chinese, and English. And she learned how to be mobile. She walked all around, or she traveled all around China by herself with her white cane. And she traveled through India and even to England. And from early childhood onwards, she had this big dream to start one day a kindergarten for blind and sighted children. And everybody was doubting her, but she didn't listen. And she indeed started a kindergarten, China's first integrative kindergarten for blind children and for sighted children. She mainly concentrated on orphans from the Sichuan earthquake. And this kindergarten became very famous because it was so different. It was colorful, It was child-friendly. It was a kindergarten full of life, where the kids learned through theater and music and dance. And at the age of 4, most of these children, they were able to speak 3 languages. And all of these children, blind or sighted, they were able to read Braille. Now, this is very, very interesting, actually. The sighted kids, when they went to regular school, and they knew Braille already, for them it was much, much easier to learn the regular Tibetan script in the regular school. Kila was never in a regular school, but her pedagogic concepts were so well known in China that a lot of kindergartens copied her concepts. Today, Kila is a leader in one of the biggest foundations in the Tibet Autonomous Region. She's designing programs, and she is implementing these projects all over the Tibet Autonomous Region. And of course, media is very interested. And there's one very famous Chinese newspaper that wrote a story on her. And unfortunately, it was not a story about her achievements, which would have been remarkable whether she was blind or sighted. But they were just interested in this.
Kila very quickly adapted to her new work environment. She could go to the washroom or get a cup of water by herself. She's a very kind, hard-working and capable woman. Despite her vulnerability, she has a very strong heart.
Well, it's well meant, but it's not very useful. I think it's quite insulting to be just reduced to the achievement that I can go to the washroom. And it's questionable that people are calling me kind-hearted despite the fact that I'm blind. Do you understand? Now, next protagonist is Srishti. And Srishti was a dancer all her childhood through, and she wanted to become a professional dancer. And at the age of 15, she fell from the stage. Why? Because she only then noticed that she was actually becoming blind. And the world collapsed. Not because she suffered from blindness, but because the friends and the family, they said, well, your career is over. You cannot dance. Srishti came to KANTHARI, to our leadership training center in the south of India, and she wanted to make a change. And we were wondering, hey, why can't you dance? You have 2 legs, you have 2 arms, come on, of course you can dance. And she started Blind Rocks. And Blind Rocks is a global organization that goes from country to country, and she is trying to get blind people out of the comfort zones and does Bollywood dance workshops. Now, Srishti is also a celebrity in Asia because she participated in a lot of dance casting shows. And of course, the media, again, was really, really interested. And there was a director that came and he made a movie about her. And again, not about the achievements of Srishti, but about life living in darkness. And the actress that played Srishti, she was always crying about the fate of being blind. And Srishti became so angry. She said, I'm not suffering from overcoming blindness. I'm suffering from prejudice. I'm suffering from stigma by the society, but also stigma that is promoted by the media. And here's Srishti, how we know her, how we love her. She is the cheerful, life-loving Srishti.
My name is Srishti and I'm the founder of Blind Rocks. There are 3 sets of workshops that we provide. The first is interpersonal skill. Here we focus on body language, body movement, gesture, posture, facial expressions, emotions, because this is especially the problem for the born blind people. And the second is dance, fashion, and beauty. Being a dancer myself, I love dancing, and now I want other blind also to dance. The third workshop we provide is adventurous trip like rock climbing, rafting, paragliding, hiking. We, as a blind, also live a rocking life. Blind rocks the world. Blind rocks the world.
Now, the last protagonist is not featured in the media yet. It's Samuel, and he's from northern Uganda. And Samuel has an amazing story. About 30 years ago, when he was 17 years old, he was abducted by Koni's rebels. And together with thousands of children, they marched through the forest towards the Sudanese border, and they had to pass villages that were completely abandoned, and only old people and people with disabilities were left behind. And these people with disabilities, they were used as objects by the rebels to train the future child soldiers how to kill. So at one point, Samuel got a machete in his hand and the order to kill a woman with disability. And he refused. And he knew that he would be killed. They sent another 17 years old with a gun and Samuel into the bush to shoot him. And Samuel still remembers how he was leaning on the tree trunk and he was waiting for the shot, and the shot was never coming. And he was shouting at the other 17 years old, and she said, "Shoot, why don't you shoot?" He looked at him, and he found out the other guy was crying. And he said, "I cannot shoot you. I know your father." And then they made a deal. They said, so that the other people, they hear the shot, "Please just shoot me in the leg." And he did. And he could escape. He came home, and he was safe. But the handicapped, or the woman with disability, never left his mind. So he started to study special pedagogy. And he started to become a teacher for Braille and sign language. And then he got his first baby boy. The boy got malaria, and he was treated with medicine, and he got profoundly deaf. And now Samuel is a really positive thinker, and he said, "It's good that it happens to me because I'm a sign language teacher already. I can start to communicate with him right away." And exactly this made the community really suspicious. Now, they saw the coincidences, and they said, well, this guy is cursed. He's bewitched. Maybe he is a witch himself. They excluded him from the community. He lost his job, and even his wife left him and the baby behind. Later, he came to Kanthari with the dream to start Thumbs Up Academy, an academy for children with and without disabilities, and an academy for parents of children with disabilities who learn that there's nothing wrong to have a disabled child. And a couple of months ago, two of my colleagues, Chaco and Ria, they went to Uganda, and they saw what he was doing. Now, this school is there. It runs on very little resources for 180 kids. It's a boarding school for 180 children, disabled and non-disabled, very happy kids. Everybody learns Braille, everyone learns sign language, and everyone can maneuver a wheelchair to play wheelchair basketball, whether you're a walker or a wheelchair user. And Chaco actually said, if I was born again and I had to choose a school, it must be Thumbs Up Academy. Now, Thumbs Up Academy is not a special school, it's a very special school. See for yourself.
Pamela. What to do? What to do?
I am a parent of a child with disability as well. Having this child with disability, I face quite a number of challenges in the community. My child, Raphael, who is deaf, he has now grown up. He's now a man, I could say now a grown-up man. He's 17 years old. I am the founder and director of Thumbs Up Uganda. Thumbs Up Uganda is an organization that works with parents and children with disability. Thumbs Up Academy, which is a very special school that addresses the needs of children with disability in the school together with other children without disability.
Ladies and gentlemen, dear journalists from all around the world, true inclusion can only be done if we focus on the story behind the story. And you, all of you, you have the power to make this change happen. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Sabriye. This is your applause. Thank you for that very moving presentation. And you are teaching us that we all need to get better at telling these stories. And I hope that we have people who say, okay, I'll travel to Uganda, or I am a journalist from Uganda. I'm going to look for Samuel, and I'm going to tell the story of his family and of the Thumbs Up Academy. All right, so we have a few minutes for questions. So if you have a question, please raise your hand if you want to ask Sabriye anything. And we will make sure that a mic gets to you. Are there any questions from the audience, please? Any questions from the audience? Yeah, there's a gentleman right in front of us.
My name is Yusuf. I'm from Ghana with Zuria FM. My question is, when you take people with disability, most of the time, if there is a program going on, they themselves feel shy of coming close. I've been asking myself, why? I was thinking they have to come around so that people will really understand their situation. And most of the time, people plan for them, people decide for them without really going to them. This year, Ramadan, I just decided we've been sharing stuff to needy. And I was expecting to see some of them at the program. And being the head of the program, I saw none. And I've been asking myself, why? Is it that the environment is not friendly for them to come? Or is it that we have not invited them? Or is it that they themselves don't want to come to the program? After the program, I went there myself. And I asked them, why you never show up?
And you say program, do you mean TV programs, radio programs, or what?
Radio program.
Radio program.
Radio program.
All right, so has that been your experience, Sabriye? You'll need to move one step to your right, to be in front of the mic.
Yes.
Thank you.
Sorry, the acoustics here is a little bit difficult. For me, it was difficult to understand you. Is it right that you asked why are people with disabilities not coming forward to your radio? Why they are shy?
Yes.
I tell you why. Because most schools, most training centers are just focusing on charity and not on empowerment. And this is the big, big problem. You could have come to our school in Tibet and you would see a number of blind people, or all the blind people that we had there, they were very media savvy. I mean, we had media there every second week, and they would do interviews. They would love to speak in Tibetan and Chinese and English. They would love to show what they can do. And and they would also not be afraid to not be everybody's darling. But this needs a good school or a good training center.
Thank you very much. Thanks. There was another question. There was somebody sitting behind the camera there. Do we still have that question? Just straight ahead.
Thank you. I am Eskandar. I'm a blind journalist of Deutsche Welle. I mean, at first I'm a journalist and then I'm blind, okay? Okay. My question is, Sabriye, what's your first lesson for us today as persons of media? What would you read or watch or listen with pleasure? What's the first step? How can we write or, I don't know, produce our article which is good for you or in your opinion?
Okay. Did you catch it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you. I think the first great step is that DW has a number of people with disabilities themselves. And I think it's great if a person with a disability or a person who's blind is going out there and showing that, hey, we can do media as well. And then this is already a great step forward, right? Whether you are interviewing people with disabilities or without, it doesn't really matter. I think you will definitely be a role model for many, also for sighted journalists. So I'm very happy that you're part of DW. This is the first step. The second step is exactly, I can just go back to my point. Think of the story beyond the story. Don't just concentrate on the disability. I think we are too fascinated on blindness, on somebody who is in a wheelchair, on somebody, and don't understand that this is normal for us. We live with blindness day by day, you know? Those who are fine with, or those who have lived in a wheelchair for quite some while, they are just like you. I mean, they have their day organized. So why, looking at that as a sensation, we don't have to do that.
Thank you, Sabriye. Thank you, Eskandar. I'll take one final question from the left side of the plenary chamber. Yes, you're welcome, from the left. Yeah, 1 second, please. We'll get you a mic.
First, I'm really impressed with the courage of Sabriye. Second, also, I'm immensely impressed by her presentation, the way she presents and speaks. It's touchy. 2 questions. First,
just one, please.
Okay.
Yes.
I wrap them in one. Where did this interest in Tibet started with her? And second, working in Tibet is fighting against a dragon. How did she manage to do that?
All right, so you need to answer very briefly.
One little tip, you can also just talk to me, right? You don't have to say he or she, her or she. But no, that's a good question. Why was I interested in Tibet? Actually, I was fed up of people in Germany telling me what I could do and what I could not do. And I was really interested in having an adventurous life. I wanted to ride horses because I love horses. I wanted to go on white water. And I wanted to contribute something useful to society. I was fighting for the rights to have, to take a risk, but also to take over responsibility. And this is often not considered for us. We are actually considered not to be taking risks or not to be taking responsibilities. We are catered for. And I wanted to get out of this. And that's why I studied Tibetology. And then I traveled on my own to Tibet. And in Tibet, I met my life partner, Paul, who's sitting over there. And this was 26 years ago. And we are still together, and we are running all these projects in Tibet, but also in India. Back then in Tibet, now in India. We are always running these projects together, and it's a wonderful life.
Thank you very much, Sabriye. Thank you so much for inspiring us, for sharing your story, and for introducing us to Paul as well. Thanks.